10 years of love, and my boyfriend, Ryan, hosted an extravagant wedding for my best friend who was battling cancer. All of this behind my back, simply because her last wish was to marry him. My best friend, Ellie, was dying, and Ryan had agreed to her wish without even consulting me. Ellie had live-streamed the entire wedding, and I cried until I passed out. Ryan spent the night with his childhood friend on an island, while I was left at home to cope with the heartbreak. My heart condition relapsed, and just when I needed him the most, Ryan abandoned me to rush Ellie to the hospital. He nearly cost me my life. Then Lucas, a wealthy businessman, came into the picture. I accepted his proposal. Despite everything that had happened, I needed to move on. He kept checking in on me, asking if I had made my decision about the wedding ring. That or, send you some options. He would send me dozens of rings, and even mention a jewelry auction in London that he could take me to. When I finally responded, I picked a stunning pink diamond. Ryan hadn't come home yet, but I could feel him near. Just as I mentioned the wedding ring, I heard his voice in the background, his panic evident. I glanced at him briefly, but I wasn't about to make excuses. Before I could speak, my phone rang. It was Ellie. "Lana, is Ryan there? I just had another nosebleed. I'm scared." Before I could answer, Ryan grabbed the phone from me. "Don't worry, I'm on my way," he said, and ran out of the house without a second thought. I couldn't believe it. He'd promised me a night out to make up for the 10th anniversary of our relationship, but instead, he chose her. My heart had stopped caring. Then, my phone rang again. It was Lucas. "Are you ready for tomorrow? I'll be picking you up." I looked out the window, my thoughts far away. I would leave this town behind, and once everything was settled, I'd marry Lucas and finally find peace. The next day, I called Ryan's grandfather to say goodbye. Ryan's family had always been kind to me, and his grandfather, who had been like a second father to me, deserved to know I was leaving. Ryan still hadn't come home when I received a message from Ellie, a picture of her and Ryan. She had mistakenly sent it to me. "Sorry, Lana, wrong person. Ethan said the photo was cute, though," she texted. The following afternoon, Ryan returned home apologizing for missing my calls the night before. "Sophie was really sick," he said, holding out a Rolex watch for me as a gift. The watch was beautiful, but I remembered he'd given Ellie the same gift, just slightly less expensive. "Are you upset?" he asked, sensing something was off. I quietly replied, "No, Sophie's sick. Of course, you had to be there for her." He seemed suspicious, but I didn't care. As I turned to leave, he grabbed my wrist, but I didn't meet his gaze. "Where are you going?" he asked. "I'm going to say goodbye to your family," I answered coldly. I wasn't in the mood for explanations anymore. I packed my things the next day and went to Ryan's family home. His parents were confused. "Why are you leaving, Lana? Everything was going so well," his mom asked, her eyes red with concern. Ryan wasn't there. Instead, Ellie walked through the door, standing by his side. "What are you doing here, Lana?" she asked with a smirk. She always seemed to think of herself as part of the family. I walked past them without a word, but Ryan chased after me. "Lana, don't misunderstand. I brought Ellie here so my parents could help her find a doctor." I stopped in my tracks. "How could you do this to me?" I said quietly, but my heart was breaking inside. Just a few months ago, Ryan had promised me he would marry me, but now he was bringing another woman home. I didn't care anymore. I didn't want to explain, and there was nothing left to explain. Later, I received a video call from Ellie. I couldn't hold back my tears when I realized the wedding she was live streaming was for her and Ryan. 3 months ago, Ellie had been diagnosed with cancer and posted about her wish for a wedding before she passed. At the time, I didn't think much of it, but now everything made sense. I couldn't breathe. The pain was too much. I cried myself to sleep while he spent his wedding night with Ellie. A few days later, Ellie called me. "Lana, I didn't know you'd be here today. I'm so sorry," she said, her voice full of guilt. I didn't respond. I couldn't. She sighed. "Ryan's mom is so nice. She even offered to help me with my treatment." "Why can't I be the one to marry into the family?" she asked, her voice full of envy. I laughed bitterly. "If you have the ability, then I wish you both the best." Later, I discovered that Ellie had stolen one of my design drafts for a competition. It was a birthday gift I had given Ryan, and now I realized he had hidden it from me and sent it to her. I was furious. I reported the stolen work and then called my friend Chloe, who ran a studio with me. She was just as angry. "That's so shameless of her. Stealing your man while pretending to be sick. I didn't care anymore. The wedding was already over, and then I heard Ryan's voice filled with nervousness. What wedding? He asked, startled when he saw me. What are you talking about? You, I said coldly. You're the one who's been lying all along. I couldn't stop myself from laughing. 10 years of love, all wasted on someone who didn't deserve it. Ryan moved closer, wrapping his arms around me, but I pulled away. Lana, I said, I don't feel anything for you anymore. He stared at me, his eyes full of confusion. Lana, what's going on with you? I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. To achieve my dreams, I'd endured harsh winters, my hands frostbitten and in constant pain, but I kept painting. Yet now, Ethan had the nerve to tell me I should just give my work to Sophie. If she wanted the recognition I'd earned, let her work for it. What did he even mean, telling me to give up what I'd fought so hard for? A man could live without many things, but if anyone dared to take what was mine, my designs, my work, I'd never let them get away with it. Ethan didn't notice the changes in me. He simply said, "You've changed," and walked out. That was the last straw. My heart couldn't take it anymore, and I collapsed, writhing in pain, pleading for him to save me. But he didn't even look back. He just left. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed, Lucas by my side, holding me close. Lana, we're going back to Beijing, he whispered. I closed my eyes. I'm exhausted. Maybe I needed to burn everything I had, every hope, every dream, in order to finally let go. Ethan didn't even realize I was gone until 3 days later. He called me desperately, but all I felt was annoyance. I blocked him. Why did he care about Sophie so much, but kept me dangling, waiting for something that would never come? I curled up on the Italian handcrafted sofa, watching as Lucas had a custom wedding dress delivered to the house. He wrapped his arm around my shoulder and gently asked, "Which style do you like?" I picked a strapless mermaid gown, beautiful in its simplicity. "This one will do," I said. Lucas smiled, and we moved forward with the wedding plans. The days passed, and Chloe told me Ethan had lost his mind trying to find me. He'd ask everyone about my whereabouts, eventually learning I had returned to Beijing. "What do you think he'll do when he finds out about your wedding?" Chloe asked, half teasing. Before I could think about it further, the doorbell rang. Expecting it to be another wedding supplier, I opened the door, only to find Ethan standing there, his eyes wild with disbelief. "Lana, you're really here?" His voice trembled. "Why did you leave without saying anything? You're doing this to hurt me, right? Come back with me, let's get married right away," he begged. Before I could answer, Lucas stepped in front of me. "Ethan, stay away from my wife." Ethan froze, his face a mix of confusion and anger. "What did you just say?" Lucas stood tall, unshaken. "Lana is my wife. You have no right to tell her what to do." Ethan's face twisted in disbelief. "What? After 10 years together, you're just going to end it like this? Were all the promises we made lying?" I had had enough. I reached into my bag and pulled out my marriage certificate with Lucas. "Ethan, I'm not lying. I'm married," I said calmly. Ethan's face drained of color as his shoulders slumped. He looked at me with hurt, then desperation. "Why? Why would you do this?" Before he could rush forward, Lucas stepped in, blocking his way with cold authority. "How can you still ask that, Ethan? After all you've done?" Lucas pulled a stack of photos from his briefcase and dropped them at Ethan's feet. "You claim to love Lana, but you've been living a lie with Sophie. Is this what love looks like?" The photo showed Ethan with Sophie, the two of them looking like the perfect couple. Ethan's arms around her protectively, his gaze soft with affection. I could barely stomach the sight. Ethan tried to explain, but his words were a mess. "It's not what you think, Lana. Sophie and I are just pretending. I'm fulfilling a wish of hers before she dies. It's all fake." A tear slipped down my cheek. Lucas gently wiped it away, then turned to Ethan with disgust. "You think we don't know what you're really doing? You married her in secret, yet you claim it's for a dying wish. Do you honestly expect Lana to believe that?" Ethan's face twisted with guilt and anger. "I didn't think it would affect you this much. I never meant for you to get hurt. I was done. Ethan, it's over." His face darkened, and the anger in his eyes became palpable. "It doesn't matter. You're still my wife. I'll drag you to the Civil Affairs Bureau if I have to." In a flash, Ethan tossed a blank check onto the table, his voice dripping with malice. "Take it. Fill in whatever amount you want. But I want my wife back, or else you'll regret crossing me." Lucas didn't even flinch. He smiled faintly, And with a voice full of disdain, he said, "Is this how you win back a woman? It's pathetic." Ethan's face reddened with rage. "What do you know, huh? Lana and I have shared a decade of memories. Do you really think you stand a chance against me?" Lucas didn't respond with words. Instead, he stepped forward, blocking Ethan's fist with one hand. "Back up, Lana," he said, his voice low and dangerous. Ethan, for all his muscle, was nothing compared to Lucas, who easily subdued him. With a cold laugh, Lucas motioned to the bodyguards, who immediately tied Ethan up. Ethan struggled, veins bulging in anger, but it was pointless. Lucas turned to Ethan with a smirk. "You're from the Heischer family, aren't you? Well, maybe you should ask your grandfather if he's heard of the Liu family in Beijing." With that, Ethan was hauled away, his shocked expression frozen as the bodyguards carried him out. Well, afterward, Lucas turned to me, his expression softening. "Lana, don't get me wrong, I don't normally act like this. But with someone like Ethan, it's the only way." I smiled gently. "Oh, I think it was exactly what I needed. I'm tired of this endless cycle." That night, Lucas arranged a dinner with our families to finalize the wedding plans. When his mother saw me, she smiled warmly. "Lana, I've heard so much about you. You're even more beautiful than I imagined." She handed me a brocade box, and I opened it to find a stunning jade bracelet, the Lucas family's heirloom. It was worth millions, something that took me by surprise. "This is for you, my future daughter-in-law," Lucas's mother said, placing it gently on my wrist. "No gift is too precious for you." When I returned home later, I found Ethan's parents waiting for me. They had come to try and convince me to reconcile with Ethan, but after hearing their plea, I calmly explained that Ethan and I were done. "You've been like family to me," I told his mother, "but I can't go back to him." As they left, Chloe sent me a screenshot. Sophie had posted nasty comments about me online, claiming I was only marrying Lucas for his money. I blocked Sophie immediately, too furious to engage with her. With the wedding only days away, Lucas and I went shopping, basking in the joy of our future. I was ready to start a new chapter, free from the past, surrounded by those who truly loved me. The gossip about Sophie reached my ears as soon as I returned to Haishi. Ethan's parents wasted no time and immediately went to the hospital to request Sophie's medical records. At first, it seemed harmless, but once they examined the details, they were shocked. Ethan's father quickly noticed that several of Sophie's test results were abnormal, showing clear signs of interference. They began to investigate further, and to their surprise, it turned out that Sophie didn't have a terminal illness at all. In fact, she was in good health before she fainted. The symptoms she had been exhibiting were nothing more than a desperate attempt to feign illness and gain Ethan's sympathy. When Ethan's mother learned of this, she had Sophie and her belongings forcibly removed from the hospital. Sophie clung desperately to the doorframe, tears streaming down her face, and begged not to be thrown out. "Aunt, please don't do this. If Ethan finds out, he will definitely argue with you," she cried. Furious, Ethan's mother raised her hand and slapped Sophie. "How dare you mention Ethan," she shouted. "Get out of here right now. Keeping you here is a waste of resources." After being thrown out, Sophie squatted outside the hospital, sobbing uncontrollably. She dialed Ethan's number, and within minutes he arrived. At first, Sophie thought Ethan had come to support her, and she prepared to share her grievances with him. However, his face darkened as he grabbed her by the hair. "What did you just say?" Ethan growled. "You're not sick. You've been faking it this whole time to deceive me." Sophie trembled, too frightened to even make a sound. She could only mouth her desperate plea. "Ethan, I do this because I love you so much. You like me too, don't you? You've said that Lana is too perfect and that when you're with me you feel at ease, happier." Before she could finish, Ethan shoved her to the ground. "Who do you think you are?" he spat. "You want to compare yourself to Lana? You're nothing. 10 of you won't even measure up to one of her fingers." A bitter, sorrowful smile crossed Sophie's face as she spoke through clenched teeth. "Ethan, why won't you admit it? You've already fallen for me. If you didn't care about me, why do you constantly take care of me? Why do you stand up for me when others bully me?" Ethan's expression remained cold. He spoke cruelly. "I only care for you because Lana asked me to. You're her friend, and I'm just doing this to ease her mind. If it weren't for that, I wouldn't even spare you a second glance." Sophie's face turned pale in disbelief, her voice rising as she screamed, You think I don't know?" On the day we were supposed to get married, I live-streamed our ceremony to Lana. Can you imagine how many calls she made to you that day? How do you think she felt hearing the sounds of our wedding night? Sophie's eyes burned with a crazed intensity as she continued. I lost you, Ethan. I lost everything because of her. I became a mad woman. When the supercar was stopped by the police, Sophie fainted, her body going limp. It was 3 days later, just before my wedding, when I received a call from Ethan. His voice was hoarse, unrecognizable. He mentioned Lana again, as if nothing had changed. Lana, can I come to your wedding? If you can't marry me, I want to see it with my own eyes. What will you look like when you marry? Before I could refuse, Lucas, who had appeared behind me, snatched the phone from my hand. He answered with ease. Of course, you're welcome. I'll make sure to personally toast you. Ethan's anger was palpable as he demanded the phone back. Give it back to Lana. I want to speak with her. Lucas raised an eyebrow, his voice calm. What's the matter with you? We're together. What I say is the same as what she says. Frustrated, Ethan hung up. Lucas handed the phone back to me, his expression soft. You weren't upset, were you? I didn't mean to cause trouble for you. I smiled. No, you handled it well. You saved me a lot of stress. He sighed in relief. Good. I was worried you might be upset. Still, my concern lingered. Lucas, do we really have to invite Ethan? I'm worried he might cause a scene at the wedding. Lucas dismissed my concerns with a confident smile. Don't worry, with me here, he won't be able to cause any trouble. The day of the wedding arrived. The guests filled the venue and I was nervously getting ready. Lucas popped in several times to bring me milk tea and snacks. His presence, comforting. Chloe, watching us, joked. Looks like the groom is trying to fatten up our bride. Lucas looked at me affectionately. Today's gonna be tough. Eat a little more. The venue was adorned with stunning flame orchids, creating a magical atmosphere. I wore a sheer, high-fashion gown and made my entrance to the beautiful music. The cheers were overwhelming. My parents, tearful, sent me off to my new life. As I walked toward the center of the venue, I reflected on how long it had taken to find the right love. 10 years. 10 years felt like a lifetime. Lucas stepped forward, eyes full of affection, and knelt before me. Lana, will you marry me? When he presented the huge diamond ring, I felt a wave of emotions flood over me. I covered my lips, slowly nodding. The crowd erupted in applause. We exchanged rings and shared a kiss, sealing our commitment to each other. Lucas made a grand gesture, securing a billboard in the heart of the city to display the video of our wedding. He wanted the world to see my happiness and wish us well. But Ethan didn't show up as promised. After the guests had left, I saw Ethan, held down by 2 bodyguards. His hands and feet were bound and his mouth was gagged to silence him. Lucas stepped forward and removed the cloth from his mouth. Sorry for the lack of hospitality, Mr. Ethan. Please don't take offense. Ethan's eyes were full of rage as he looked at me. Lana, please. I've prepared everything for you. I swear I will win you back. I simply nodded, offering him no sympathy. Thank you, Mr. Ethan, for attending our wedding. We look forward to your invitation to your wedding, too. Lucas raised an eyebrow and an amused smile, tugging at his lips. We'll definitely come. Defeated, Ethan collapsed. You've done this on purpose. You want me to watch as you marry him. You want to break me. Lucas didn't deny it. Thank you for the compliment, he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. Ethan's fury was palpable. You're just a scheming bastard, Lucas, unbothered, simply replied. That's right. Ethan, completely defeated, sat in despair. Do you know how it feels to watch you marry him? It's like 1,000 blades are stabbing me. I can't breathe. I watched him with no expression, saying calmly, I felt the same when I knew you were marrying Sophie. Lucas had won. Ethan and I were finally done. On the night of our wedding, I sat nervously, feeling the tension in the air. When Lucas entered, the warmth from his body soothed me. He leaned down, softly asking, "Do you like it?" That night, I experienced the greatest joy of my life. The next day, after a night of passion, I quickly got ready to accompany Lucas to a banquet with his friend. I wore a champagne-colored strapless dress, and when I stepped into the room on Lucas's arm, all eyes were on us. One of Lucas's close friends, the second son of the Sithu family, came over. "So, you're the Lana that our young master's been thinking about." I smiled politely. "Young master Sidhu, I've long admired your name." He laughed. "You have no idea. Since Lucas first saw you as a child, he's been obsessed with you. He quietly supported your career and bought all your paintings." I began to understand why Lucas had always been there for me. His care for me had begun years ago. Lucas smiled, his voice soft. "Do you remember the cherry blossom tree? The crybaby who always sat under it?" "That was me," I gasped, recognition dawning. "You were the kind big brother who comforted me." Lucas smiled, his hand gently brushing my hair. "I've always watched over you, Lana. No matter what happened, I wanted you to be happy." The truth hit me like a wave. Lucas had been by my side all along, in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to claim the love he had always quietly given me. That night, surrounded by friends and laughter, I realized that I had finally found the happiness I had always been searching for.